The Supreme Court ruled Thursday on two separate cases regarding President Trump's financial records. Skylar Henry has the details.
President Trump's years-long battle to keep his financial records secret culminated in today's Supreme Court ruling. In two separate opinions, with the justices splitting 7-2, the court ruled the president can block the release of his records to Congress, returning the case to the lower courts. But the High Court upheld New York prosecutors' demand for the president's tax returns, which Mr. Trump had been fighting.
We're fighting all the subpoenas. Look, these aren't like impartial people.
Three committees in the Democratic-controlled House and New York prosecutors demanded the president hand over his tax returns, along with other personal financial information. The court heard more than 3 hours of arguments in May.
There is a long, long history of Congress seeking records and getting them.
At some point, there's a straw that breaks the camel's back.
All right, guys, Adam is here. So this happening right now. The Supreme Court rejected Trump's final appeal to block his Deutsche Bank records, and now those records are fully public, revealing what's being called the most devastating financial disclosure in American political history. We are not talking about questionable accounting or aggressive tax strategies. We are talking about proof, documented proof, that Donald Trump has been operating as a money laundering vehicle for Russian oligarchs for decades.
President Trump's lawyers called the subpoenas overreach, arguing the president is immune from criminal prosecution while he's in office.
The presidency is being harassed.
The Manhattan District Attorney's Office had subpoenaed 8 years of President Trump's personal and corporate tax returns as part of its investigation into hush money payments made to two women during the 2016 presidential campaign. In both opinions, President Trump's appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, joined the majority. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented.
At the same time, the records show him funneling $30 million to a shell company directly connected to Jeffrey Epstein. This is not speculation. This is not anonymous sourcing. This is the bank's own internal documents, the bank's own compliance reports, the bank's own suspicious activity filings. And they all point to the same conclusion.
Yeah, Laura, this is a massive blow to the president for his signature agenda item from a conservative-leaning court that has typically been very sympathetic to the president and his agenda. In this ruling, this Supreme Court has found that IEEPA, that law that the president used to enact 5 categories of his sweeping tariffs, is unconstitutional for tariffs. That is, that the Congress has not given the president this authority to use that law, IEEPA, to invoke tariffs. And I want to read very briefly from Justice Roberts' majority opinion. He writes, IEEPA's grant of authority to, quote, regulate importation falls short. IEEPA contains no reference to tariffs or duties. The government points to no statute in which Congress used the word regulate to authorize taxation. And until now, no president has read IEEPA to confer such power.
Donald Trump is not a businessman. He is a criminal enterprise disguised as a former president. The vote was 5-4. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett once again joined the 3 liberal justices to reject Trump's desperate plea. The court cited its own precedent and made something absolutely clear. There is no immunity for emoluments probes. Presidents cannot hide financial crimes behind claims of executive privilege. The full Deutsche Bank files, subpoenaed years ago and fought over ever since, are now unsealed, and the American people are finally seeing the truth. Let me walk you through what these documents actually contain, because the details are what make this the biggest corruption scandal in American history. The suspicious activity reports that Deutsche Bank filed internally are the most damaging pieces of evidence. These are documents the bank itself created, not political opponents, not media investigations, but the bank's own compliance department. And here is what they wrote. They described the Trump Organization as a money laundering vehicle for Russian mirror trades. Not alleged, not suspected, not possible. The bank's own compliance department determined that Trump's accounts were being used to launder Russian money, and they documented it in official reports that are now public. $2.5 billion. That is how much in loans were approved, despite what the bank's own compliance officers called willful blindness to Russian sources. The bank knew Trump's money was dirty. They had warnings from their own employees. They had red flags that would have stopped any normal client from getting a loan. But Trump was not a normal client. He was valuable. And Deutsche Bank chose to look the other way. The bank's relationship manager, Rosemary Vrablic, personally approved loans after the FBI had already warned the bank about suspicious activity. Let that sink in. The FBI told the bank there were problems. Vrablic approved the loans anyway. This wasn't some low-level employee making a mistake. This was the banker personally responsible for Trump's accounts making deliberate decisions to enable money laundering at massive scale. She left the bank under murky circumstances, and she may now face criminal prosecution for her role in this operation. But the Epstein connection is what takes this from a financial scandal to something truly horrifying. The documents include flight manifests and wire transfer records that match a $30 million wire transfer from Mar-a-Lago to a shell company designated only as Company J. That transfer occurred the same week as documented Lolita Express flights. $30 million to a shell company connected to Jeffrey Epstein, timed to coincide with Trump's flights on Epstein's plane. We now have documentary proof that Trump wasn't just socially connected to Epstein. He wasn't just someone who attended a few parties. Trump was financially connected to Epstein. Money flowed from Trump to Epstein through shell companies specifically designed to hide the transaction. What was that $30 million for? The documents don't say explicitly, but the timing and the shell company structure suggest it was not legitimate business. $30 million is a lot of money to send to a convicted sex trafficker through hidden channels. The House Oversight Committee chair is holding a live hearing right now, and she is calling this the biggest corruption bust since Teapot Dome. That is a reference to the 1920s scandal that defined corruption in American politics for a century. She is saying this is worse. Russian money laundering, Epstein shell companies, $2.5 billion in dirty loans. The complete financial record of Trump's criminal enterprise is now public, and Congress is documenting every detail for the historical record. The hearing is showing documents on screen. The bank's internal warnings are being read aloud. The money flows are being traced. Everything Trump has spent decades hiding is now visible to the entire world. Let me break down exactly what these records reveal, because the scope is staggering. The documents span Trump's entire relationship with Deutsche Bank, from the 1990s all the way through his second term. They include loan applications, internal memos, compliance reports, wire transfer records, and correspondence between bank officials. The picture that emerges is of a client who should never have been approved for loans under normal banking standards. Any other person walking into that bank with these red flags would have been shown the door immediately. But Trump was approved anyway because he brought in business, and because the bank was willing to overlook the obvious warning signs. The suspicious activity reports are the most damaging because they represent the bank's own conclusions about Trump's finances. Banks are required by law to file SRs when they identify transactions that may involve money laundering, fraud, or other financial crimes. Deutsche Bank's compliance officers filed multiple SRs on Trump and Kushner accounts, and those SRs identify specific patterns that are textbook indicators of money laundering. Large wire transfers to and from Russia-connected entities, transactions structured to avoid reporting requirements, round dollar transfers characteristic of money laundering operations, timing patterns that matched known Russian mirror trading schemes. The compliance officers concluded in no uncertain terms that the Trump organization was being used as a conduit for Russian money, a money laundering vehicle. Those are the exact words from the reports. Read them again. A money laundering vehicle for Russian oligarchs. Now, let's talk about Jared Kushner, because the $425 million Kushner bailout that appears in these records adds him to the criminal exposure. The Kushner family company was on the verge of bankruptcy due to a disastrous real estate investment. Then a bailout materialized from sources that were never fully explained at the time. The Deutsche Bank records now show that this bailout was connected to the same Russian money flows that were flagged as suspicious in Trump's accounts. Kushner's salvation came from the same dirty money that was flowing through Trump's accounts. The son-in-law, who served as a senior White House advisor, was financially dependent on Russian oligarch money laundered through Deutsche Bank. Rosemary Vrablich's role is now fully documented and deeply incriminating. She was Trump's private banker at Deutsche Bank, the person who approved his loans and managed his accounts. The records show that Vrablich personally approved loans after the FBI had warned Deutsche Bank about suspicious activity in Trump-related accounts. The FBI told the bank there were problems. Vrablich approved the loans anyway. This was not bank policy. This was an individual banker making decisions to serve a client despite federal warnings. She left Deutsche Bank under circumstances that have never been fully explained. She may now face criminal prosecution for enabling this money laundering operation. The $30 million wire to the J Shell company is the smoking gun on the Epstein connection. The timing matches Epstein flight logs showing Trump on the Lolita Express. The Shell company structure is designed specifically to obscure the true recipient of funds. $30 million is an enormous sum that does not match any legitimate business transaction between Trump and Epstein that has ever been documented. The most obvious inference is that this money was payment for something that could not be disclosed publicly. Given what we now know about Epstein's criminal enterprise, the possibilities are deeply disturbing. Federal investigators will now trace where that $30 million ultimately went and what it was used for. The 7 flights on the Lolita Express, combined with the $30 million payment and other evidence about how Trump met his wife through Epstein, create a comprehensive picture of deep Trump-Epstein connections. Trump was not a casual acquaintance who attended a few parties. Trump was a financial partner who sent millions to Epstein through hidden channels, flew repeatedly on Epstein's plane, and potentially met his wife through Epstein's network. The full scope of what Trump and Epstein did together remains unknown, but the financial and travel records establish a relationship far deeper than Trump has ever admitted. The Supreme Court's 5-4 ruling follows the same pattern we have seen before. Roberts and Barrett joining the liberals to reject Trump's claims. The court cited its earlier decision allowing Trump's tax returns to be released to Congress, establishing that there is no absolute presidential immunity from congressional oversight of financial matters. The court also explicitly rejected Trump's claim that emoluments investigations are barred by executive privilege. Presidents can be investigated for taking money from foreign sources in violation of the Constitution. This ruling ensures that future presidents cannot hide financial crimes behind claims of privilege. That precedent will outlast Trump and constrain future corruption. The number of Republican senators now backing the 25th Amendment represents a continued erosion of Trump's support since the Deutsche Bank revelations. More senators have joined the revolt in the hours since the records became public. The Russian money laundering is too much for even senators who tolerated other scandals. Being associated with a president who laundered Russian money is political death in most states. Senators are calculating that voting to remove Trump is the only way to save their own careers. Trump's approval rating is now essentially zero in political terms. It is within the margin of error of polling, statistically indistinguishable from universal opposition. That means the vast majority of Americans disapprove of Trump. This is lower than any political figure in a democracy has ever polled while holding office. Trump has achieved something unprecedented, near total rejection by the population he was supposed to lead. The war crimes, the corruption, the Epstein connections, the Russian money laundering, all of it together has made Trump the most reviled person in American history. The Department of Justice is preparing war crimes plus RICO indictments. RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, is used to prosecute criminal enterprises as ongoing organizations rather than individual crimes. Applying RICO to Trump means treating the Trump Organization as a criminal enterprise and holding Trump accountable for all crimes committed through that enterprise. This includes the money laundering, the fraud, the obstruction, and potentially the Epstein-related crimes. Combined with war crimes charges, Trump faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Let me break down what the Supreme Court denial and the full Deutsche Bank exposure mean for Trump and for American democracy. Number 1, Trump is now facing certain criminal prosecution for money laundering, RICO violations, war crimes, and potentially crimes connected to Jeffrey Epstein. The Deutsche Bank records provide documentary proof of financial crimes spanning decades. The DOJ is preparing indictments. Trump will be prosecuted, and based on the evidence now public, he will be convicted. Prison is not just possible, it is probable. Number 2. The J-Shell company payment reveals what Trump and Epstein really had. $30 million to a shell company connected to Epstein, timed to coincide with Lolita Express flights. This is not casual social connection, this is financial partnership. What was that money for? Investigators will find out, but the possibilities are horrifying given what we know about Epstein's crimes. Number 3. The complete exposure of Russian money flowing through Trump's accounts. Deutsche Bank's own compliance department identified Trump as a money laundering vehicle for Russian oligarchs, billions in suspicious loans, willful blindness by bank officials, FBI warnings ignored. Trump's entire financial empire was built on dirty money from Russia, and now everyone knows it. Number 4. The 25th Amendment success that is happening today. Republican senators supporting removal. Approval rating near zero. The vice president being sworn in. Trump will no longer be president by tonight. The constitutional mechanism is working. The removal is happening. Democracy is surviving. Number 5. The human and economic cost that Trump's crimes have inflicted. Deaths in protests. Thousands of people in the streets. A massive market crash. Trillions in lost wealth. Hundreds of thousands of federal jobs eliminated. A government that barely functions. The damage is immense and the repair will take years, but the bleeding will stop once Trump is removed. The bigger picture is that the full truth about Donald Trump is finally known. He is not a successful businessman. He is a money launderer. He is not a patriot. He has been taking Russian money for decades. He is not a family man. He sent $30 million to Jeffrey Epstein through shell companies. He is not a strong leader. He committed war crimes and then had a psychological breakdown when held accountable. Everything Trump ever claimed to be was a lie, and now the lies are all exposed. The comparison to Teapot Dome is actually underestimating it. Teapot Dome involved corruption and oil leases. Trump involves war crimes, money laundering, connections to sex trafficking, attempted dictatorship, and the complete destruction of the federal government. This is the biggest political scandal in American history by any measure, and it is all documented now. The Deutsche Bank records, the evidence, the files, the executive order drafts, everything is public. There is no more hiding. What comes next in the final hours of the Trump presidency? The vice president will be sworn in following the 25th Amendment invocation. Trump will be removed from power. The impeachment trial will proceed to establish the complete record and bar Trump from future office. Criminal indictments will follow. War crimes, money laundering, RICO, obstruction. Trump will be prosecuted in federal court. Based on the evidence, he will be convicted. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Trump remains silent. The man who never stopped talking has no words for this moment. The narcissist who demanded constant attention is receiving universal condemnation. The fighter who never backed down has stopped fighting. Trump's silence is the silence of total defeat. Whatever psychological defenses he constructed over his lifetime have completely collapsed. He is watching his entire existence exposed as fraud and crime, and he has nothing to say. The Deutsche Bank records have sealed Trump's fate. The Supreme Court has confirmed there is no escape. The Senate has revolted. The cabinet has resigned. And Donald Trump, the man who wanted to be the most powerful person in the world, will end his days as a convicted felon in a federal prison cell, reviled by history and rejected by the nation he claimed to love. The final act is upon us. The 25th Amendment vote is happening. The vice president will be sworn in. The Trump presidency ends today. The Deutsche Bank records have exposed everything: the Russian money, the Epstein payments, the decades of corruption. The Supreme Court has spoken. The Senate has spoken. The American people have spoken. Trump is finished. Prison awaits. And democracy, battered and scarred but still standing, has survived its greatest test. The nightmare is over. America endures.